Mr. Chair, we are now live.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, staff. Appreciate it. Good evening and welcome to the Town of Ajax Committee of Adjustment meeting for Wednesday, May the 29th, 2024. This meeting of the Committee of Adjustment is being held in person in Council Chambers at Ajax Town Hall and is also being live streamed for public viewing on the internet pursuant to the Committee of Adjustment's terms of reference and meeting procedures. If we encounter any technical difficulties, we may take a brief recess while they are resolved. I thank you in advance for your patience and will now proceed with the meeting. For those of us joining us this evening, in person, if you haven't done so already, I ask that you complete the sign-in sheet at the podium if you wish to speak to an application. Please include your email address when completing. I'll now call this meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. We'd like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today is situated within the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas, more specifically the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, signatories of the Gunshot Treaty of 1788 and the William Treaties of 1923. The land is and will continue to be home to the Indigenous peoples. Well, let us acknowledge the mistakes and traumas of the past through authenticity and support truth and reconciliation. Let us engage and celebrate Indigenous communities by being leaders of action and acknowledging the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's recommendations towards truth and reconciliation. Let us keep these principles close as we continue towards truth and reconciliation and as we move forward with kindness and respect as a community. Before moving on to the application portion of this evening, I'd like to confirm whether there are any disclosures of interest from members of the committee. Bernadette, I know you're on remote. Could you let us know if you...
No declarations of conflict of interest.
Okay. Thank you, Bernadette. Then we'll move to our next item on the agenda, which is adoption of the meeting minutes. So I'll look for a motion from a committee member. Ken?
I move adoption of the minutes of the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Noted. Can I get a seconder? Tomas, thank you. And any discussion on the motion? If not, then I'll look for a vote. Oh, sorry, discussion on the motion. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to point out that there's one minor spelling mistake. It is on page 4. Beside my question, the word desk is there and it should be deck.
Okay. Staff, we're good with that?
Noted.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Laurie. Any other further comments or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, then I'll look for a vote. And the motion to adopt last month's meeting minutes has been carried. Thank you. The Committee of Adjustment derives its jurisdiction and authority from the Planning Act. The committee is responsible for considering applications which seek to authorize the following: minor variances from the provisions of the town's zoning bylaw, extensions, enlargements, or variations of the legal non-performing use of any land, building, or structure, permitting the use of any land, building, or structure for any purpose that, in the opinion of the committee, conforms with the provisions of the zoning bylaw, where the uses permitted in the zoning bylaw are defined in general terms, consent to sever a new lot from an existing lot, consent to alter the existing boundaries of a lot, such as lot additions or lot line adjustments, consent to register rights of way and easements over land, consent to sell, mortgage, charge, or enter into any agreement for more than 21 years for a portion of land, and lastly, validation of land title where there has been an error in the description of the land. When considering minor variances, the committee is to assess whether the general intent and purpose of both the Town of Ajax official plan and zoning bylaw are maintained, the proposal is desirable for the appropriate development and or use of the subject land, building, or structure, and that the variance is minor in nature. When considering consents, the committee must ensure proposals conform to the Region of Durham and the Town of Ajax official plans and have regard to the matters outlined under the Planning Act. In all scenarios, the committee must ensure consistency with the in effect provincial policy statements and conformity with the in effect provincial plans. The process of tonight's meeting will be conducted in the following manner. The applicant and or agent will be called upon and will be asked to provide a brief description of the minor variance that's being sought. Once a motion has been put forward by a committee member, there will be no further input from the applicant and or agent or anyone having interest in the application. After a decision is made, a notice will be sent out and there will be a 20-day appeal period. The decision of the committee may be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal by the applicant or a specified person or public body. as outlined in the Planning Act. Please note, however, that third-party appeals, i.e. appeals from neighboring landowners or many members of the public, are not permitted. The decision will become final and binding if no appeals are received during the 20-day appeal period. If a building permit or other approvals are required, they may be filed during the appeal period. However, no permits or approvals will be issued until the appeal period is over and the decision becomes final and binding. A respectful decorum during this evening's proceedings is expected of all present, either in person or electronically at all times. Let me now take a moment to introduce you to the committee members presiding over the procedures this evening. To my far right is Laurie Roberts. Then we have Ken Elliott, Tomas Baca. Online, virtually, we have Bernadette Santiago. I'm the chair of the committee, Wasif Ahmed. And to my left, amongst all the people there, we've also got town staff, and I'll start with Eric Simpson, Senior Planner and Secretary Treasurer of the committee, Mark Chuang, the Planner of the Town of Ajax, and Sarah Moore, Legislative Specialist for the Town of Ajax. And we'll now move to the application portion of this evening's agenda, and the first application for tonight's meeting is application A1124 for 20 Crawford Drive, and a minor variance being sought is to permit a maximum aggregate area of 61 square meters for all platforms more than 1.2 meters in height above finished ground level. Eric, can you confirm whether notice was served on this application for 20 Crawford and whether there were any responses received?
Mr. Chair, notice was served and no responses were received.
Appreciate that, thank you. And do we have an agent or the owner for 20 Crawford online?
Yes, I'm the agent for the owner, Brad Levere.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Levere. Thank you for being with us. I'll hand over the floor to you to perhaps tell us a little bit about the application. What I will let you know, and those in attendance this evening, is that the committee is in receipt of a staff report put together by the Planning Division of Town of Ajax that is recommending approval for this application on the basis of 3 conditions. One, that the subject variance applies only to the property municipally known as 20 Crawford, and in accordance with the drawing submitted with the minor variance application, especially in Figure 2, or this decision shall become null and void. Similarly, that the owner and applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property and obtain all necessary building permits, or again, this decision shall become null and void. Can you confirm that you have received the staff report, and how do you feel about the 3 conditions?
Yes, we've received it, and the conditions are fine. We will adhere to them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Olivier. Can you maybe take a minute to maybe walk us through just some high level of what you're seeking to do here?
Sure, it's quite straightforward, actually. We had there's an existing deck at the back of the property, and we were seeking to just make it larger and infill sort of the shape of it to sort of square it off a little bit. And in doing so, we are larger than the bylaws allow, so it forced us to go to get a variance. The existing deck that was there wasn't conforming either. We don't have any problem with the setbacks. It's strictly just a size issue.
Okay. All right, then, thank you, sir. I'll then look to the committee to see if there's any questions or comments for the applicant. Okay. Bernadette, again, I know you're virtual, but feel free to chime in as you need, okay?
Will do, and no questions.
Thank you. All right, so seeing nothing from the committee, then I'll look to see whether there's anybody that's here from the public space to either speak for or against the application. And again, if you're here virtually, you can just take yourself off mute to announce yourself. Okay, so hearing none, then I'll look to see whether there's a motion to be put forth by the committee members. Laurie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we approve application A11-24 as the requested variance is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development, and is in keeping with the general intent for the official plan and zoning bylaw, and it is based on the 3 conditions that you previously mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Any a seconder on that? Thank you, Ken. Got you seconded. And any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, then I will look for a vote. All right, Mr. Olivier, the motion has been carried for application A1124, and it'll now be subject to the appeal period.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
All right, you have yourself a good evening. All right.
You as well.
All right, so moving right along, we'll now move to application A1224. This is for 3 Everett Road, Lot 80, Plan M112. The application is seeking to permit a minimum setback from the front lot line of 3 meters. Eric, can you confirm whether a notice was served and whether there were any responses received?
Notice was served and no responses were received.
Okay. All right, then do we have somebody here to speak for this application, either the owner or the agent?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we did have Banan on the line. We didn't get a chance to do an audio check, so perhaps they can try and activate their mic now.
Okay.
I can see that a microphone has been activated. Unfortunately, we don't have any audio in the room. Perhaps if you can try connecting directly with the microphone on your laptop device, if you may be using headphones, that could cause an issue.
Okay, so you know what, maybe we'll give it another agenda item and we'll double back on this one if the committee members are okay with that. Okay, and I guess it's Mr. Banan Hanudi, if you can hear us. We're just going to move on to the next topic. Well, you can maybe try to see if you can get your audio issues rectified. We'll now move to application A1324. This is for 41 Cameron Street. And the minor variance application being sought is to permit a maximum garage width of 6.8 meters. Eric, again, can you confirm whether notice was served on this one and whether there were any responses received?
Mr. Chair, notice was served and no responses were received.
Okay, thank you. And do we have an agent or applicant here to talk about 41 Cameron Street? Again, if you're here on virtually, if you could just take yourself off mute, that should do the trick.
Mr. Weedle was on the line earlier. I'm not sure if he could activate his microphone.
Hello?
There we go.
Awesome.
Okay, perfect. Yes, this is Brian Wheatle, and I'm representing my clients, Kaylee Pace and Francis Pellin, the homeowners of 41 Cameron Street.
Okay.
So what we are doing, we're requesting a minor variance for the width of the garage, having it at 6.8 meters, simply because our clients are looking for a little bit more garage width to park their cars comfortably in the evenings, and just for safety reasons and with the rising car thefts that are going on, they just want a little bit more storage in the garage and more access and comfort within that garage space.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Weedle. Let me just see if the committee members have any questions about this application. Lori?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to staff, I just wanted to confirm, is this the current existing property, is it entirely being demolished?
Correct. A whole new dwelling would be constructed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weedle, I was reminiscent at the top just to advise you that the committee here does have a staff report that's been prepared by the Town of Ajax Planning Department that does recommend approval, subject to 2 conditions. One, that the subject variance applies only to the property at 41 Cameron Street and in general accordance with the drawings that were submitted as part of that, and that the owner applicant also obtain necessary building permits from the town of Ajax. Are you okay with both of those conditions?
Yes, we're okay with those conditions.
Okay, perfect. Then I'll go back to the committee members to see if there's any other questions or comments on this application. Okay, seeing none, then I'll look to see whether there's anybody else here, either in person or virtually, here to speak on behalf or to speak for or against this application. Again, we're on application A1324 for 41 Cameron Street. Okay, seeing and hearing none, then I'll look for a motion. Tomas?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve application A13-24, subject to all staff conditions on the basis that it is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property, and in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Tomas. Do we have a seconder? I saw Lori first. Okay, any discussion on the motion? All right, seeing none, then I'll look for a vote on the motion as presented. And the vote, the motion has been carried, Mr. Weedle, so you are now subject to the appeal period for 41 Cameron. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Okay, have a good evening. All right, we'll move on to, let's see if we can get Benan Hanudi back on for 3 Everett. Benan, if you can hear me, are you able to take yourself off mute?
Benan, using the bottom center button of your screen, if you could try to activate your microphone, please. Go ahead. Without video, unfortunately, I can't hear if you can, or see if you can hear me or see if you're speaking, but we don't hear any audio from you. It shows that your microphone is activated, but unfortunately there's no sound coming in. Are you using a microphone directly connected with your computer?
Okay, so staff, I'd like to maybe recommend that maybe we'll come back to this one at the end of the agenda. Okay, so Benan Hanudi, if you're still on, if you can hear us, we'll move your application to the end, and I want to make sure that we can try to get everything rectified. All right, then we'll move to application A1424. This is for 38 Bradbury Crescent. The minor variance being sought is to permit uncovered steps leading to a below-grade entrance within the east interior side yard with a minimum setback of 0.2 meters from the east interior side lot line. Staff, if you can confirm whether notice was served and whether there was any responses received.
Mr. Chair, notice was served, and there's just the one letter of support that was provided.
Okay, and I can speak on behalf of the committee members that we did receive that with the package. Thank you, Eric. All right, and do we have the owner or applicant here this evening for 38 Bradbury? Okay, can I maybe just get you to come up to the mic and the podium there, sir? And if you haven't signed in, I believe there's a pen and a paper there. If you could just sign in there.
Yes, I'll do that.
That's the name.
My name is Jasper Horn. It was I that did the drawings for the walkout that's been requested by the clients behind me.
Okay. 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 So I know this particular application was here, as the minutes will indicate, last month as well. And we now, as committee members, also acknowledge that there are still 6 conditions as they are on the screen, and I'll quickly give them a read, both for the applicant and yourself, that the subject variance applies only to the property municipally known as 38 Bradbury, in accordance with the drawings that were submitted with the application, that an unobstructed pedestrian path of travel to and from the uncovered steps be maintained at all times. The unobstructed pedestrian path of travel to and from the rear yard also be maintained at all times. The existing utilities be relocated as necessary in consultation with the applicable utility agencies and the town to a location that does not impede access to or from the uncovered steps. That the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property and obtain all necessary building permits from the town, or this decision shall become null and void. Does the applicant or agent have any issues with any of these conditions?
No.
Okay, great. All right, so I'll open up the floor to you, sir, if you have anything to add about the application.
Only insofar as that the original applicant, application, as you rightly suggested, was declined, but in the meantime, the immediate neighbour has decided that with the conditions that imposed there and agreed, he has chosen not to oppose it. And so we feel as though it must be given a rubber stamp and be allowed to proceed.
Okay. Well, we'll assess the rubber stamping part in a few minutes through the vote process, but I appreciate that. Any questions for the agent? Ken, please go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. Was there any other change that was made to this application other than the agreement with the neighbor? There was no other change?
There was no other change. The only change is that this signature was given by the neighbour subject to the conditions specifically to damage to lawn and fence. There would be a reparation put in place.
Okay.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
the previous time that this was before the committee, there was an indication that the neighbor has windows that are abutting to the side yard. And my question is there going to be lighting for this below-grade entrance? And will that lighting be
Well, the only way I
shaded?
can respond to that is that we're not setting any precedent here. It's not as though this is something new that hasn't been approved before. The 0.2 meters has been approved on numerous.
It's not the 0.2 meters. I'm
Yeah.
asking about a light for the underground entrance, and that it does not shed light onto the neighbor's property. That's my question.
Oh, no. It's all below grade.
And the lighting will be facing downwards and not upwards?
Right.
Okay, I think that's the question, right, Ken?
I beg your pardon.
Does that satisfy you, Ken? Okay, Lori?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To staff, in regards to the agreement that has been made between the neighbor and the applicant, should the neighbor move and someone else moving in, would this issue become problematic with them? Does that agreement stay with the land? Is it on title?
Through the chair, this isn't a formal agreement. This was just a letter that was consented by the current owner. So if the ownership changed, they would need to speak to that new owner if an issue were to arise.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, any other questions or comments from the committee members? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir. I'll now look to see whether there's anybody here to speak either for or against the application. And again, we're on application A1424 for 38 Bradbury Crescent. Okay, seeing none, then I'll look to see, my committee members to see if there's anybody willing to put forth a motion. Lori?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we approve application A14-24, subject to the 6 conditions as outlined in the staff report, as it is minor in nature, desirable and appropriate for the development and use of the property, and is in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, motion noted, thank you. Can I get a seconder? Tomas? All right, any discussion on the motion? All right, if not, then we'll look for a vote on the motion as presented. And the motion has been carried 4-1 this evening. So to the applicant and the agent for application A1424 for 38 Bradbury, it'll now be subject to the 20-day appeal period. Okay, thank you. Good evening. All right, we'll now move to the next application. This is minor variance application A1524 for 1935 Ravenscroft Road. The minor variance being sought is to permit an accessory retail garden center within 155 meters of the southerly property line. Eric, can you confirm whether notice was served and whether there were any responses received?
Notice was served and no responses were received.
Thank you, sir. All right, and do we have an agent or an applicant here representing this application A1524?
Yes, John Romanov here, the architect for the project.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Romanov. How are you today?
Very good, yourselves.
I'm doing very well, thank you. All right, so Mr. Romanov, I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that the town staff has put together a report to the committee recommending approval of the application on the basis that of one condition, which is that there be a submission and obtainment of approval for a site plan amendment application to the satisfaction of the town, or this decision shall become null and void. Can you confirm, Mr. Romanov, that you've been in receipt of the staff report?
Yes, we have the staff report. We have no issue with applying for the SPA.
Okay, perfect. That's great. And I'll give you a minute or so to maybe tell the committee a little bit about what is being sought here.
Sure. The existing zoning would only permit a garden area on the sidewalk in front of the store currently. And the operators of the store would prefer to have it freestanding in the parking lot so it doesn't impede people moving forward across the frontage of the store. It would be a seasonal garden center, so it would only be positioned in the parking lot through the season, through the garden season. So the 155 meter from the rear property line extends the current zoning permission forward from the sidewalk out into the parking lot where we're proposing again to put this temporary garden center.
Okay. All right. I'll look to committee members to see if there's any questions for the agent. Yeah, go ahead, Lori.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not too sure whether this would be the applicant or staff. Is there any impact on the existing parking? Was there anything looked into to see whether it would hinder parking in that plaza?
Through the chair, yeah, we did assess that. There's already a significant surplus on site, so it would take away spaces, but because there's already a surplus, there's no issues or non-compliances.
Okay, and another question, if that's okay. That all the big spaces in that plaza have been occupied, right? This was the last large
There still
unit.
are a couple pads that could be developed.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's not in fact like that. The parking was already allocated towards all of that, so it doesn't change anything.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize, just
go for
one more question, and Mr. Romanoff, this is just kind of based on what you had said. I'm going to assume that there potentially could be, that space could be used seasonally in the winter months if they were to sell Christmas trees or anything. So would that have an impact, I guess, to staff on snow removal and where they pile the snow?
No, there's still other areas where the snow storage is meant to be, and it doesn't cut off fire routes or anything like that. So there's still access, site circulation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Any other committee members? Any questions? Okay. I actually have a little bit of a concern, maybe more than a question, but I'll form it in the form of a question, Mr. Romanov. Whenever I kind of hear or see spaces like this in parking lots, the one thing I worry about is just forklifts driving back and forth, impeding cars or traffic or pedestrians. I'm not sure whether you can speak to this, but is there adequate training given to employees when they're actually doing something like that?
I mean, the staff unloads trucks and so on at the back of the store with forklifts and dollies all the time. So I could only answer in the affirmative that they are trained in loading and unloading pallets of material.
Yeah, no, I'm well familiar with the loading dock in the back of that property. It's just more of a concern of obviously you don't have the same pedestrian traffic in the back. I can appreciate the fact it's probably an unfair question. It's just something on my mind that was just I was kind of thinking about. All right, any other comments? Last call from committee? Okay. Is there anybody else here to either speak either for or against this
Mr. Chair, I think Bernadette may have a question.
Oh, sorry, Bernadette. I apologize.
That's all right, Mr. Chair. I actually just wanted to express the same concern that you've raised. So I do frequent that plaza quite a bit. And in its current state, I will say that a lot of the cars that come through to go to Besco in particular, there's a lot of high traffic in the area, and you've got cars trying to cut across the parking lot to kind of get to the McDonald's or to the Dollarama. And I share the same concern in that placing a garden center just north of the Besco building might actually cause a lot more traffic and the potential for accidents, especially with the pedestrian traffic, in addition to the cars that are going back and forth. I realize that's not a question. I just wanted to put my comments on the record.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Thank you for sharing that, Bernadette. Mr. Romanov, would you happen to know whether there'll be a point of sale terminal within the garden center itself, or will people actually have to purchase and then actually have to go into the building and then come back out to, let's say, go to their vehicle or whatever?
Right. As far as I know, the intent is to have a point of sale in the garden center.
Okay. All right. That makes me feel a little bit better. Okay. All right. Any other comments or concerns from committee? Questions? Okay. And I believe I've already asked whether there's somebody here to either speak for or against the application. No, there isn't. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Romanov. Then I'll look to see whether the committee members are willing to put forth a motion. Can I see your hand?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the application A1524 for 1935 Ravenscroft Road on the basis that the application is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the lands, and in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and bylaw, and that the approval is subject to the condition as put in the staff report by staff. Thanks.
Okay. Noted. Thank you, Ken. Can I get a seconder on that motion? Tomas? Okay. Any discussion on the motion as presented? Seeing none. All right, then I'll look for a vote on the motion. All right, and the motion has been carried 4-1 in favor of approval. So, Mr. Romanov, the application has been approved this evening, and it'll now be subject to the 20-day appeal period. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Have a good evening. All right, so we have one more consent application. So it's, my recommendation to the committee members would be let's maybe do that one before we go back to 3 Everett. That's okay. Then we can spend more time if we need to from a technical perspective. Okay. All right, so then we'll move on to application 5F, which is a consent application for LD 0224, LD 0324, LD 0424, and LD 0524. These applications collectively are requesting consent to sever the subject lands at 850 850 Riverside Drive into 5 parcels, 4 severed parcels and 1 retained parcel. The existing dwelling on the subject land is to be demolished, as the proposed severances will facilitate the development of a single detached dwelling on each of the 5 parcels. Part 6 on the draft 4R plan represents a right-of-way widening on Riverside Drive and is required to be conveyed to the town of Ajax. Part 7 on the draft 4R plan represents environmentally sensitive lands and is required to be conveyed to the Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, or the TRCA. The consent application is seeking to consent to sever a LDO 224 specifically, rather, is seeking consent to sever a 512.06 square meter residential parcel of land, retaining a 2,306.16 square meters residential parcel of land. Consent application LD 0324 is seeking consent to sever a 548.3 square meters residential parcel of land, retaining a 1,757.86 square meters residential parcel of land. Consent application LDO 424 is seeking to consent to sever a 560.61 square meters residential parcel of land, and while retaining a 1,197.25 square meters parcel of land for residential use. And consent application LDO 524 is seeking consent to sever a 586.17 square meters residential parcel of land while retaining a residential parcel of land of 611.08 square meters. These consent applications are all related to zoning bylaw amendment application Z124, which proposes to rezone the subject lands from the country residential or CR zone to a residential 1D or R1D zone in order to facilitate the proposed severances. Do we have an agent or applicant here to speak for the application?
Yes, this is Mohammed Khan. I'm here.
Mr. Khan, unfortunately, your audio is coming through, but it's quite faint. If you could try increasing your volume or speaking closer to your microphone, please.
Okay, can you hear me okay now?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, this is Mohammed Khan, and I'm the owner and applicant.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, Mr. Khan. Just before I hand it over to you, I'm just going to confirm with town staff whether notice was served on this consent application for land division, and whether there were any responses received, rather.
Yeah, notice was served and no responses were received.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that, Mr. Khan. So I will just let you know that the committee does have in front of it a staff report that recommends approval for the consent applications, LDO 2 through LDO 5, with the conditions that the owner applicant submit a deposited reference plan that confirms the dimensions of the proposed severed and retained parcels to the satisfaction of the town, that any zoning noncompliance resulting from the proposed severances be brought into compliance, that the owner applicant obtain a demolition permit from the town to remove all existing buildings and structures located on the subject lands, and that all existing buildings and structures be removed prior to the final approval of consent application LDO2 through LDO 524, that the owner applicant enter into a development agreement with the town covering all requirements, financial and otherwise, of the town, that the owner applicant also submit detailed engineering drawings which illustrate the functional lot grading design, servicing, easements, if applicable, and driveways of the proposed severed and retained parcels in conformity with the town of Ajax engineering design criteria and standards, that the owner applicant submit an arborist report or tree inventory and preservation plan prior to the issuance of a demolition permit for the subject lands and 3 meters beyond the limits of the lands, and that no existing trees be removed until the applicable financial obligations have been provided to the town. Similarly, that the owner applicant submit a noise study to the satisfaction of the town or the region, that the owner applicant provide the necessary cash in lieu of parkland dedication to the town, and lastly, that the owner applicant satisfy the conditions and requirements, financial and otherwise, of all external agencies and or government authorities. Mr. Khan, have you received a copy of this report, and are you okay with all of these conditions?
Yes, I have received a copy and I'm good with these conditions.
Okay, perfect. I was hoping you'd say that and not have me repeat any of it. Could you maybe take a minute to tell the committee a little bit about the project, sir?
Okay, this was one detached dwelling on a 226-foot frontage of lot. This is very similar to the one on the south, which Coghlan Homes is developing. So that one is already approved, and I think the development is in progress. Our intent is to sever these into 5 lots and then sell these lots, and there'll be individual people who'll be building their own homes on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Sorry, could you repeat the last statement?
I was saying I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, perfect. I was hoping you'd say that. Okay, great. So then let me look to see whether there's any questions here from committee. Ken?
Good evening to the applicant. I am a neighbor in the community, and I'm familiar with this property. And I know that along the street frontage for this existing house, there is a number of existing conifer trees. They look like they are of a size and caliber that they could be moved by a tree spade and relocated. And I wondered if that was possible to be considered, as opposed to having to chop all of them down to make entrances to the driveways. And
Yep.
I'm not looking for an answer as much as to say I successfully did it on another project, so I know it's possible to be done, and I think it could be an improvement, and I hope it could be relocated onto possibly the TRCA property or some other place that the municipality indicates.
Very good question, and I would hate to see those trees go as well. And I have had many conversations with the city staff and the potential buyers, and we will take every effort possible to have them replaced to a different location wherever possible. Yes, they're very beautiful trees. They should not be chopped down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions from committee members? Okay. All right. Seeing none, then I'll look to see whether there's anybody here to speak either for or against the application, most likely virtually, as I see nobody in the room. Nope. Okay. Then if there's no other questions, then I'll look for a motion from committee members. Lori, I see you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Having reviewed all the agency comments, I hereby move that consent application LD02, LD03, LD04, LD05-24 be approved subject to the following conditions. The Town of Ajax in their report dated May 29th and the 9 conditions as you have already mentioned. The Regional Planning, their report dated May 22nd, had 4 conditions. Regional Works, they had a report dated May 21st. They have one condition, and making it aware that there will be connection charges of $72,532.72. The Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, their report dated May 22nd, had 6 conditions as well. And finally, that subsection 50-3 or 5 of the Planning Act shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or transaction involving the land subject to this consent. This motion has been made as the proposal complies with all the applicable policies and plans affecting the subject lands.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Lori. Can I get a seconder? Ken?
I second that motion.
Amazing, thank you. And any discussion on the motion as presented? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move to a vote. Okay, so Mr. Khan, your motion the motion as presented has been unanimously approved. It'll now be subject to the 20-day appeal period.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. Have a good evening. All right, then we'll double back to item 5B, Bravo, for 3 Everett Road. Benan Hanudi, if you're still on, if you could please try to take yourself off mute one more time. Let's see if we can get this resolved.
Mr. Chair, they are on the line. I just don't see any microphone activated.
Okay.
Oh, they have activated a microphone. Unfortunately, without video, I can't see if they're attempting to speak.
We'll perhaps give another 10 seconds or so. If not, then if the committee is so willing, we do have a staff report. We can move forward. We know what the application is seeking. I'll repeat that shortly, but if we can't get the audio figured out, the committee so desires, we can proceed. Okay. Yes, Lori.
Sorry, are they able to call in on the phone by any chance, or does it have to be through?
They can call in. I reached out via email. I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
And that email was to Benan Hanoudi?
Yes, so perhaps, Mr. and Mrs. Hanoudi, if you could check your email, Eric has provided a telephone number for you to call in, and we could connect via audio that way.
I didn't actually give her my number. I'm going to now.
Again, Mr. Hanoudi, just to repeat, there has been an email sent to you by Eric Simpson from our town of Ajax, which highlights the call-in details of how to join the meeting this evening. So if you haven't already, look for that email if you could. We'll wait maybe another 60 seconds or so, and then we'll proceed. In the meantime, for the purposes of the records, we're on application A1224 for 3 Everett Road. And there is a minor variance that is seeking approval of to permit a minimum setback from the front lot line of 3.0 meters. And their Town of Ajax Planning Department has put forth a staff report to the committee that outlines 2 conditions that the subject variance apply only to the property municipally known as 3 Everett, and in accordance with the drawings that were submitted with the application of the minor variance, that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage on the property, and that the owner applicant obtain all necessary building permits as well, or this decision shall become null and void.
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you? I'm just going to put you on speaker, okay? Benan, you're on speaker now, so feel free to speak.
Yeah. This is Benan Hanoudi, architect, and we are seeking extending the width of the garage and building a second-story bedroom on top of it.
Can you mute your computer, Benan? We're just getting feedback. Okay.
Do you hear me now?
Yeah, perfect.
So it's a extension to garage and a second-story bedroom on top.
Okay. Thank you for joining us and putting up with the technical issues, Benan. This is the chair of the committee, Wasif, speaking. Just wanted to let you know that the committee members do have a staff report in front of them that does recommend approval, subject to 3 conditions: that the variance apply only to the property municipally known as 3 Everett, and in accordance with the drawings that were submitted with the application, and that the owner applicant maintain the existing drainage and obtain all necessary building permits. Are you okay with these conditions?
Sorry, just repeat that again.
I am okay with that.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Then I'll open it up right to my committee members to see if there's any questions. Yeah, Lori, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a point of clarification. At the beginning, I think you had mentioned there was only 2 conditions and there's 3 in the staff report.
Okay.
Okay.
you.
And then my question is to staff. I do see that this is a corner lot, and with the addition that is being built, will it impact the sight line at all for drivers wanting to make the left off of Everett onto Bryant?
Through the chair, so there's a significant boulevard that's still in between the road and the property line, so we don't foresee any issues.
Okay, and I'm sure I know the answer to this one, but just to make it clear, it does appear that there is a crosswalk going to a park right there. What happens during construction for that crosswalk that appears to be right in that area?
I don't see why there'd be a need to do anything like on the actual street with respect to the construction, so it should be maintained all on site.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Ken?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I notice that in the page 3 of the staff report, there is a comment by Design Services. The owner is encouraged to implement appropriate tree preservation methods during construction of the proposed building addition in order to preserve the existing trees located on the subject property. And the drawing indicated on page 5 appears to indicate that there is a tree. I can't tell how substantial it is, but do you know already whether or not the tree will be able to be protected during construction?
So I don't know exactly, but I'm going to pass it over to the applicants.
We will promise that we will protect this tree.
Okay, thank you kindly.
Thank you, Benan. All right, any other questions, comments, committee? Okay. All right, then, and I'm not sure whether I asked this earlier at the top, Eric, I apologize, but was there notice served on this one and any responses received?
Yeah, notice was served and no responses were received.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, there's no other questions or comments, then I'll look to see whether there's anybody here in attendance to speak either for or against the application. Again, we're on application A1224 for 3 Everett Road. Okay, seeing none, then I'll look to see if one of my committee members would like to put forth a motion. Tomas?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve application A12-24, subject to all staff conditions on the basis that it is minor in nature, desirable for the appropriate development and use of the property, and in keeping with the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Tomas. Can I get a seconder? Ken? See you. Okay, any discussion on the motion? All right, then I'll look for a vote. Okay, so Benan, the motion has been carried, and the application will now be subject to the 20-day appeal period. Thank you for putting up with the technical stuff and calling in. I really appreciate it.
For your time and appreciate for the discomfort.
Sounds good. Have yourself a good evening. Thank you.
You too, bye.
Bye-bye. All right, that draws to a close our application portion of this evening's meeting, and I'll now look to see if there's any other business or new business to be brought up by committee members or staff. Seeing none. All right, then I'll look for an adjournment motion. Ken?
I move we adjourn.
Okay, thank you. And seconded by Tomas. Appreciate that. And look for a vote for adjournment. And the motion has been carried. The meeting has now been adjourned at 7:50.